Kate Henderson had always been the quiet one in her family. At 28, she worked as a librarian in the small town of Millbrook, where everyone knew everyone else's business. She lived in a modest apartment above the bakery, spending her evenings reading novels and tending to her small garden on the fire escape. Her life was simple, predictable, and safe. That changed the day she discovered her brother Michael's secret. Michael was 32, married to Sarah for 5 years, and they had just welcomed their first child, little Emma. Kate adored her niece and visited often, bringing children's books and homemade cookies. Sarah had become like a sister to Kate, filling a void left by their mother's early death when Kate was just 15. On a Tuesday afternoon in March, Kate stopped by Michael and Sarah's house to drop off a birthday gift for Emma's first birthday party planned for the weekend. She had her own key, a privilege Sarah had insisted upon after Kate had helped during Sarah's difficult pregnancy. The house was quiet, and Kate assumed no one was home. She made her way to the kitchen to leave the wrapped gift on the counter when she heard Michael's voice coming from his home office. He was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones that immediately caught Kate's attention. Something in his voice was different, softer, more intimate than she had ever heard him speak to Sarah. Kate froze by the kitchen island, not wanting to interrupt what seemed like a business call, but unable to move without making noise on the creaky wooden floors. "I know, Rebecca, I know," Michael was saying. "Sarah doesn't suspect anything. She's been so focused on the baby she barely notices when I'm late coming home." Kate's heart began to race. Rebecca was Michael's colleague at the marketing firm where he worked. Kate had met her once at a company barbecue, a stunning redhead with an infectious laugh and designer clothes. Sarah had mentioned feeling a bit intimidated by Rebecca's confidence and success. "I can't wait to see you tonight," Michael continued. "I told Sarah I have a client dinner. She won't question it. She trusts me completely." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. Her legs felt weak, and she had to grip the kitchen counter to steady herself. This was her brother, the man who had walked her down the aisle at Sarah's wedding when their father couldn't make it back from his business trip. The same brother who had cried when Emma was born, telling everyone he was the luckiest man in the world. Kate stood motionless for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. She heard Michael's chair creak as he moved around his office, still talking in that tender voice that should have been reserved for his wife. 6 months, Rebecca. 6 months of sneaking around. And I'm tired of it. But I can't hurt Sarah right now. She's still recovering from the pregnancy complications. The doctor said she needs to avoid stress." Kate's mind raced. Sarah had indeed had a difficult pregnancy, spending the last 2 months on bed rest due to high blood pressure. The delivery had been traumatic, requiring an emergency cesarean. Even now, a month later, Sarah was still weak and emotional, struggling with what the doctor had gently suggested might be postpartum depression. The conversation continued, each word feeling like a knife twisting in Kate's chest. Michael talked about hotel meetings, weekend conferences that didn't exist, and elaborate lies he had constructed to cover his tracks. He spoke about Rebecca with a passion and excitement that Kate realized she hadn't heard him use when talking about Sarah in months. When Michael finally hung up, Kate remained frozen in the kitchen. She heard him moving around the office, probably getting ready to leave for another fictitious business obligation. Kate knew she had to get out of the house before he discovered her there. She quietly placed Emma's gift on the counter and slipped out through the back door, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the lock. Walking home, Kate felt as if she was seeing the world through different eyes. The familiar streets of Millbrook seemed foreign and unsettling. How could she have been so blind? How had she missed the signs? She thought back to recent family gatherings, analyzing Michael's behavior with this new, terrible knowledge. There had been signs. Michael's phone constantly buzzing with work messages during family dinners. His sudden interest in working out and buying new clothes. The way he had snapped at Sarah last week when she asked about his late nights, telling her she was being paranoid and clingy. Kate spent a sleepless night staring at her bedroom ceiling, torn between loyalty to her brother and love for Sarah. She had lost her mother young and had learned to value family above everything else. But Sarah was family too now, wasn't she? And what about little Emma? Didn't she deserve to grow up in a home built on honesty? By morning, Kate had made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't pretend she hadn't heard what she heard. Sarah deserved to know the truth, even if it shattered the perfect life she thought she was living. But first, Kate would give Michael a chance to do the right thing himself. She called Michael that afternoon and asked to meet him for coffee at their usual spot, Mabel's Diner on Main Street. Michael arrived looking distracted, checking his phone repeatedly and glancing at his watch. "What's so urgent, Kate?" he asked, sliding into the worn vinyl booth across from her. "I have a client presentation to prepare for." Kate studied her brother's face, looking for any sign of guilt or remorse. She saw only impatience and mild annoyance at having his time interrupted. "Michael," Kate began carefully, "is everything okay with you and Sarah?" His expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" "She seemed tired when I saw her last week. More than just new mother tired. She seemed sad." Michael stirred his coffee aggressively, the spoon clinking loudly against the ceramic mug. "Sarah's fine. She's adjusting to motherhood, that's all. It's normal." Kate took a deep breath. This was her chance to give him an opening, a way to confess and make things right before she had to take matters into her own hands. "Michael, if there was something wrong, something you needed to tell Sarah, you know you could talk to me first, right? I love you both. I want you to be happy." For a moment, Michael's facade cracked. Kate saw something flicker in his eyes, guilt, perhaps, or fear. But then his expression hardened again. "There's nothing to tell, Kate. I don't know what you're getting at, but everything is fine. Sarah and I are fine. Emma is fine. We're all fine." The repetition of the word fine told Kate everything she needed to know. Her brother was not going to confess. He was going to continue lying to his wife, to his family, to himself. Kate left the diner that day with a heavy heart, but a clear conscience. She had given Michael the opportunity to do the right thing, and he had chosen to continue his deception. Now she had to decide how far she was willing to go to protect Sarah from living a lie. Over the next 2 weeks, Kate watched her brother's double life unfold with growing disgust and determination. She found herself studying Michael's every move during family visits, noticing details that had once seemed innocent but now felt sinister. When Michael claimed he had to work late on Thursday, Kate drove past his office building and saw the parking lot was nearly empty. His car was nowhere to be found. When he said he had a weekend conference in the nearby city, Kate happened to be at the grocery store when she saw Rebecca loading wine and expensive cheese into her car, dressed in casual clothes that suggested a romantic getaway rather than a business trip. The lies were becoming more elaborate and frequent. Michael had started a pattern of working late 3 nights a week and having weekend obligations that kept him away from home for hours. Sarah, still struggling with her recovery and the demands of caring for a newborn, seemed to accept his explanations without question. She was too tired and overwhelmed to be suspicious. Kate began spending more time with Sarah, ostensibly to help with Emma, but really to observe how Michael's absence was affecting his wife. What she saw broke her heart. Sarah was lonely, exhausted, and increasingly isolated. She had stopped calling her friends, claiming she was too tired for social visits. She had given up her part-time job at the local newspaper to focus on motherhood, leaving her financially dependent on Michael. During one particularly difficult afternoon, Kate arrived to find Sarah crying in the nursery while Emma slept. Sarah quickly wiped her tears and tried to smile, but Kate could see the pain in her eyes. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice hoarse. "I don't know what's wrong with me lately. I should be happy. I have everything I've ever wanted, but I feel so empty inside." Kate's heart ached as she listened to Sarah blame herself for feelings that were completely justified. If only Sarah knew that her instincts were right, that something was terribly wrong in her marriage. "Sarah," Kate said gently, "you're not wrong to feel the way you do. Taking care of a baby is exhausting, and you're basically doing it alone with Michael working so much." "He's working hard to provide for us," Sarah replied automatically, but Kate could hear the doubt in her voice. "I shouldn't complain. He's doing his best." That night, Kate went home and made a list of everything she knew about Michael's affair. The phone conversations she had overheard, the lies about his whereabouts, the changes in his behavior and appearance. She documented dates and times, creating a timeline that painted a clear picture of deception. But having evidence and knowing what to do with it were two different things. Kate agonized over her options. She could confront Michael again, more directly this time. She could try to gather more concrete proof, perhaps photographs or phone records, or she could go directly to Sarah with what she knew. Each option felt fraught with danger. If she confronted Michael again and he still refused to confess, he might become more careful, making it harder to expose him later. If she tried to gather more evidence, she risked being caught and accused of spying. If she went straight to Sarah, she risked being seen as a troublemaker trying to destroy a family. The decision was made for her during Emma's first birthday party. The party was held at Michael and Sarah's house on a beautiful Saturday afternoon in April. Friends and family filled the backyard, celebrating Emma's milestone with cake, balloons, and laughter. Kate arrived early to help Sarah with preparations and found her sister-in-law in a rare good mood. "I'm so excited," Sarah said, adjusting Emma's tiny party dress. "This is our first real celebration as a family. Michael promised he would take the whole weekend off, no work calls or emergencies." Kate smiled and nodded, but her stomach twisted with anxiety. She knew Michael was supposed to meet Rebecca that evening for what he had told Rebecca was a special celebration of their 6-month anniversary. As the party progressed, Kate watched Michael play the role of devoted husband and father. He held Emma for photos, kissed Sarah affectionately, and charmed the guests with stories about first-time parenthood. To everyone else, he looked like a man completely in love with his family, but Kate noticed the way he kept checking his phone. She saw him step away twice to take calls, claiming they were from work colleagues who needed quick answers to urgent questions. She watched him grow increasingly restless as the afternoon wore on. At 4 o'clock, Michael approached Sarah with an apologetic expression that Kate had seen too many times recently. "Honey, I'm so sorry, but I just got a call from the Peterson account. They're having a crisis, and they specifically requested me to come in and handle it. I know I promised to be here all weekend, but this could make or break our biggest contract." Sarah's face fell, but she forced a smile. "On a Saturday? Can't someone else handle it?" "I wish they could, but Mr. Peterson specifically asked for me. He's flying back to New York tomorrow morning, so if we don't resolve this today, we could lose the account entirely." Michael's lies flowed smoothly, practiced and convincing. Kate watched Sarah's shoulders slump with disappointment. "How long will you be gone?" "A few hours at most. I'll be back in time to put Emma to bed and help clean up. I promise." Sarah nodded reluctantly, but Kate could see tears forming in her eyes. This was supposed to be a special day for their family, and once again, work was taking priority. As Michael kissed Sarah goodbye and made his excuses to the guests, Kate felt a surge of anger unlike anything she had ever experienced. She watched her brother lie effortlessly to the woman who loved him, using their daughter's birthday party as cover for another rendezvous with his mistress. When Michael left, Kate saw Sarah retreat to the kitchen, claiming she needed to cut more cake, but really just trying to hide her tears from the guests. Kate followed her inside and found Sarah gripping the kitchen counter, her knuckles white with tension. "He promised," Sarah whispered, not looking at Kate. "He promised he would be here for the whole party. Emma's first birthday, and he's choosing work again." Kate stood behind Sarah, watching her sister-in-law struggle with emotions she couldn't fully understand. Sarah didn't know that her instincts were correct, that Michael's priorities were indeed misplaced, but not in the way she thought. "Sarah," Kate began, her voice barely audible above the sounds of the party continuing in the backyard. "I know I shouldn't be upset," Sarah continued, still facing away from Kate. "He's providing for us. He's being responsible. But sometimes I feel like I'm married to a ghost. He's physically here, but mentally, he's always somewhere else." Kate took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been dreading and anticipating for weeks. Sarah deserved to know the truth, but telling her would change everything forever. "Sarah, what if I told you that your instincts are right? What if Michael really isn't where he says he is?" Sarah turned around, confusion replacing the sadness in her eyes. "What do you mean?" Kate's heart pounded as she realized there was no going back from this moment. "I mean, what if there was more going on than just work demands? What if Michael was lying about where he spends his time?" "Kate, what are you talking about?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, but Kate could hear the fear creeping in. Before Kate could answer, they heard laughter from the backyard as guests continued celebrating Emma's birthday, oblivious to the life-changing conversation happening in the kitchen. Kate looked at Sarah's innocent, trusting face and realized she couldn't bring herself to shatter her world on their daughter's first birthday. "Never mind," Kate said, her courage failing her. "I'm probably just being paranoid. You're right. He's working hard for the family." But Sarah was no longer listening to Kate's words. Something in Kate's tone, in her hesitation and obvious distress, had triggered Sarah's instincts. For the first time in months, Sarah was truly paying attention to the warning signs she had been unconsciously ignoring. "Kate," Sarah said slowly, "there's something you're not telling me. What do you know about Michael that I don't?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Kate realized that her attempt to spare Sarah's feelings had only made things worse. Now Sarah was suspicious, but she didn't have the facts she needed to protect herself. Kate made a decision that would haunt her for weeks to come. Instead of telling Sarah the truth, she chose to give Michael one final chance to confess, but this time with real consequences. "I can't tell you what I think I know," Kate said carefully. "But I think you should ask Michael directly about where he really goes when he says he's working late. Ask him tonight when he gets home from this supposedly urgent client meeting." Sarah's eyes widened with understanding and fear. "You think he's lying about work?" Kate nodded slowly. "I think you should trust your instincts, Sarah. They're usually right." When the party ended and the guests left, Sarah spent the evening in a state of anxious anticipation, waiting for Michael to return. Kate helped her clean up, both women moving through the motions of normalcy while their minds raced with possibilities and fears. Michael returned home at nearly midnight, claiming the client crisis had been more complicated than expected. He found Sarah waiting in the living room, still in her party dress, with an expression he didn't recognize. "How did the meeting go?" Sarah asked, her voice carefully neutral. Kate, who was supposed to have left hours ago but had lingered to support Sarah, watched from the kitchen as her brother spun another elaborate tale about difficult clients and complex negotiations. She saw Sarah's face grow more skeptical with each detail, and she knew that the foundation of trust in this marriage was finally beginning to crack. What happened next would force Kate to make the most difficult decision of her life. The confrontation Kate had been dreading finally came 3 days after Emma's birthday party. Sarah had called Kate that Tuesday morning, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and desperation. "Kate, I need to see you right now. Can you come over?" When Kate arrived at the house, she found Sarah pacing the living room while Emma napped upstairs. Sarah's usually neat appearance was disheveled, her hair uncombed and her eyes red from crying. "I followed him," Sarah said without preamble. "Last night, when he said he had another late meeting, I followed him." Kate's heart sank. She had hoped that her subtle warnings would encourage Sarah to confront Michael directly, not to start conducting surveillance on her own husband. "Sarah, what did you see?" "He went to the Marriott downtown. He met a woman in the lobby." Sarah's voice broke. "They were kissing, Kate. My husband was kissing another woman like they were lovers, not colleagues." Kate sat down heavily on the couch, realizing that the moment of truth had arrived, whether she was ready for it or not. "It was Rebecca, wasn't it?" Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger with anger. "From his office, I recognized her from the company barbecue." Kate nodded slowly, knowing there was no point in pretending anymore. "You knew," Sarah said, studying Kate's face. "You knew about this, didn't you? That's what you were trying to tell me at the party." Kate felt sick to her stomach. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I found out by accident a few weeks ago and I didn't know what to do." "A few weeks?" Sarah's voice rose to a near shout. "You've known for weeks, and you didn't tell me?" "I wanted to give Michael a chance to tell you himself. I thought maybe if I confronted him, he would end it and confess." "You confronted him?" Sarah stared at Kate in disbelief. "When?" Kate explained about overhearing the phone conversation, about meeting Michael for coffee and trying to give him an opening to confess. With each detail, she watched Sarah's expression shift from hurt to fury. "So while I was home taking care of our daughter, struggling with depression and exhaustion, both of you were keeping this secret from me?" Sarah's voice was eerily calm now, which Kate found more frightening than her earlier tears. "Sarah, I was trying to protect you. You were still recovering, and the doctor said you needed to avoid stress." "Protect me?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "You call letting me live a lie for weeks protecting me? You call watching me blame myself for feeling suspicious and paranoid protecting me?" Kate realized she had made a terrible mistake. In trying to shield Sarah from immediate pain, she had allowed her to suffer in a different, more insidious way. Sarah had been questioning her own instincts and sanity, while everyone around her maintained the illusion that her marriage was fine. "I was going to tell you," Kate said weakly. "I just wanted to give him one more chance to do the right thing." "When?" Sarah demanded. "When were you going to tell me? After he got Rebecca pregnant too? After he gave me some disease? After he decided to leave me for her?" The questions hit Kate like physical blows because they highlighted risks she hadn't fully considered. In her focus on preserving family harmony, she had potentially put Sarah's health and future at risk. "I'm telling you now," Kate said. "I should have told you immediately, but I was scared and confused. I've never been in this situation before." Sarah sat down across from Kate, her anger giving way to exhaustion. "Tell me everything. Every single thing you know or suspect." For the next hour, Kate shared all the details she had been carrying alone. The phone conversations, the lies about work trips, the changes in Michael's behavior, the timeline of deception she had documented. Sarah listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification or more specific details. When Kate finished, Sarah sat in silence for several minutes, processing the full scope of her husband's betrayal. 6 months, Sarah finally said. "He's been having an affair for 6 months. That means it started when I was on bed rest, when I was most vulnerable and dependent on him." Kate nodded, wishing she could take away some of Sarah's pain, but knowing that the truth, however devastating, was better than continued deception. "I need to confront him," Sarah said, standing up with sudden determination. "Tonight when he comes home, I'm going to tell him I know everything." "What will you do?" Kate asked. "I don't know yet. I need to think about Emma, about our finances, about everything, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't live with someone who looks me in the eye every day and lies." That evening, Kate waited at her apartment for news. She knew that the confrontation between Sarah and Michael would determine the future of their family, and she felt responsible for the explosion that was about to occur. The call came at nearly 11 o'clock. It was Michael, and he was furious. "How could you do this to our family?" he shouted into the phone. "Sarah is hysterical. Emma is crying. You've destroyed everything." "I destroyed everything?" Kate shot back, finding her courage at last. "You're the one who's been lying and cheating. I just told the truth. You should have minded your own business. Sarah didn't need to know. It would have ended eventually, and no one would have been hurt." Kate was stunned by her brother's selfishness and lack of accountability. "Sarah had a right to know. She's your wife. She deserves honesty. She deserves stability and security, which I was providing. Now she's talking about divorce, about taking Emma away from me. Is that what you wanted?" "I wanted you to stop lying to her," Kate said firmly. "I gave you multiple chances to tell her yourself, and you chose to keep deceiving her. This is the consequence of your choices, not mine." Michael hung up without another word, leaving Kate to wonder if she had just lost her brother forever. The next morning, Sarah called to update Kate on what had happened after the confrontation. Michael had initially tried to deny everything, then minimized the affair as a meaningless fling, and finally blamed his behavior on work stress and Sarah's postpartum depression. He had begged for forgiveness and promised to end the relationship with Rebecca immediately. "What did you tell him?" Kate asked. "I told him I needed time to think. I can't make any decisions right now while I'm this angry and hurt. I've asked him to stay at his brother's house for a week while I figure out what I want to do." "How are you holding up?" "I'm devastated, but I'm also relieved. I thought I was losing my mind. For months I felt like something was wrong, but everyone kept telling me I was imagining things, that it was just hormones or exhaustion. Now I know I was right to trust my instincts." Over the following weeks, Kate watched as her family slowly began to heal and rebuild, though not in the way anyone had expected. Sarah filed for divorce after discovering that Michael's affair with Rebecca had been more serious than he had admitted. Rebecca had been pressuring him to leave his wife, and he had been considering it before Sarah found out. The divorce proceedings were difficult and acrimonious. Michael blamed Kate for destroying his marriage and refused to speak to her for months. Other family members took sides, with some supporting Kate's decision to tell the truth and others believing she should have stayed out of the situation. But as time passed, Kate began to see positive changes in Sarah's life. Without the constant stress of living with deception, Sarah's depression began to lift. She returned to work at the newspaper and reconnected with friends she had lost touch with during her marriage. She and Emma moved into a small apartment near Kate's, and the two women became closer than they had ever been. Michael eventually married Rebecca, but their relationship was strained by the knowledge that it had begun as an affair. The guilt and mistrust that had started their relationship continued to poison it. Kate's relationship with her brother slowly began to heal, though it would never be the same. Michael eventually acknowledged that his marriage to Sarah had been in trouble long before Kate exposed his affair, and that his anger toward her had been misplaced. He apologized for putting her in an impossible situation and for blaming her for the consequences of his own actions. Looking back, Kate realized that her decision to speak up had been the right one, despite the pain it had caused. She had learned that protecting people from the truth wasn't actually protection at all. Sarah deserved the chance to make informed decisions about her life, even if those decisions were difficult and painful. The experience changed Kate in fundamental ways. She was no longer the quiet, passive person who avoided confrontation at all costs. She had found her voice and learned that sometimes Love requires difficult choices and uncomfortable truths. Years later, when Emma was old enough to understand, Sarah would tell her daughter about the aunt who had been brave enough to speak up when it mattered most. Kate had shown that real loyalty meant caring more about someone's long-term well-being than their immediate comfort. The command Kate had given herself that day in the kitchen, "Tell him the truth or I'll do it myself," had seemed like an ultimatum born of anger and frustration. But it had actually been an act of love, a refusal to let someone she cared about live a lie any longer. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the truth, even when it hurts, even when it changes everything, and even when it costs you something precious in return. Kate had learned that silence in the face of injustice isn't kindness, it's complicity, and she would never make that mistake again.